Welcome to the Girl Means Business podcast. I'm your host, Kendra Swalls, a former teacher turned entrepreneur, here to help you navigate the messiness of mom life and biz life. Each week, my guest and I will share our experiences, insights, and tips to help you move your business from survival mode to success mode. So grab your favorite drink and let's dive in, because this girl means business. Hey there, welcome to episode 174 of the Girl Means Business podcast. Today, we are going to be talking all about branding. This is something that I get really excited about. It's one of those things I kind of geek out about in my business. I think branding is so important. And when I first started my business, my idea of branding was a really cute logo, maybe a nice website, but I had really no clue what branding was or what it meant. And over the last several years, I have really kind of grown to appreciate a really great brand. It's one of those sort of glass-shattering moments of once you understand what makes a brand really great, you start to notice when a brand is doing something really well, when they're being smart and strategic. But you also kind of notice when brands are missing the mark a little bit. So it's a catch-22, but it's kind of fun to have sort of an insider perspective and be able to look at a brand and go, oh, they're really killing it. Or be able to look at one and go, oh, they're missing this piece, and being able to identify what that piece is because you've done it in your own business. So I'm excited to dive into our conversation today. Now, if you missed last week's episode, I encourage you to hit pause for just a second, or maybe go listen to it after you listen to this episode, because last week's episode 173, was all about infusing your personality into your brand, which I think is a really big part of your brand. You are your business. You are the face of your business. Unless you are running this massive corporation, you are the person that people are going to be connecting with. When someone inquires about your products or your services, or places an order or books a service with you, it's you who's going to be interacting with them. So it's important that you infuse your personality into that so that your audience gets to know you. So if you haven't listened to the episode yet, make sure you go back and listen to episode 173. I am really excited to introduce you to our guest today. Lisa Haggis helps service-based entrepreneurs position their business as one of a kind in their field for higher visibility, impact, and earning potential. She leverages 18 years of experience in marketing and business strategy, and she's committed to cracking the code on what makes a business immediately interesting and worth mentioning. Now, hint, it begins with having something original to say. We'll get into that in our conversation today. She's the founder of Realize Your Brand, a high-touch business consultancy, and the creator of the Substantial Branding Method, an approach that transforms your growing business into the legacy-level brand that you uniquely are meant to create. We had a great conversation around branding. I cannot wait for you to meet her. She's an incredible source of information and knowledge. So let's jump into my conversation with Lisa. Hi, Lisa. Welcome to the Girl Means Business podcast. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Kendra. It's so awesome to be here.
Well, I'm excited to chat with you. We're going to get all into branding in our business, but I want you to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about who you are, what you do, kind of give us a little version of your story.
Great. Yeah. So I am the founder of Realize Your Brand. I'm a brand strategist and a clarity advisor to my clients. I help them get crystal clear on who they are and the business that they're building so that they can put it into an unrepeatable brand that makes marketing a lot easier for them.
Nice. I love that, clarity advisor. I haven't heard that one before. So we're going to get all into like the nitty gritty, but tell me sort of in the simplest terms, what branding means to you, because I think a lot of people have an idea of what it is, but a lot of people also have like their own version of it. So what is it to you?
Yeah. Well, so I'll share that my background was in marketing. And so that I think really informs why branding matters to me, because in the marketing world, you're trying to get in front of people, you're trying to get their attention, get them to buy your things. And really connect, and you're putting your offers and your message and your business in front of them. And branding is making sure that the things you're putting in front of them are actually enticing, compelling, what they're looking for, unique and original. And so to me, branding is all of those core decisions that you make right at the essence of your business to say, this is who we are. This is what we stand for. This is the change we're making. This is how we're doing it. This is who we're doing it for. And so it is all of those critical pieces that really form the foundation for who you are to people, what they expect from you, why they would choose you, and why they would recommend you to somebody else.
No, I love that description. And it's for someone, I've been in business for myself for a decade now in various ways and shapes and forms, but now it makes sense to me. Like I can wrap my brain around that. But when I was first starting in business, like that wasn't even sort of on my radar of what branding meant. I think a lot of people think of brand as like, oh, it's my logo, it's my colors, it's my font. And that's, I think, a piece of it. But you're saying it's a much deeper, broader piece than just the sort of aesthetics of what we show.
Yes, because like really what you're trying to do is you're trying to get people to, get an instant sense of why they can trust you, why they would choose you. You're trying to draw people in. And a logo doesn't really do that. Nobody recommends a service or a product to somebody else because of the logo or colors. They recommend it because of the way that that company made them feel, the way that that product, was something they hadn't seen before, or like it's just, stories worth telling. And so it's that innately interesting, like it's that interest factor at the core of the business that people are saying, hey, I've never seen this, or you got to check this out. And that takes intention, like in it as you're kind of designing or engineering what your actual business is. That's when you're building your brand.
So I'm going back in my mind to when I first started my business. So my first business was a photography business. And I think back to kind of that moment when I went from, okay, this is just a hobby I do for fun, and maybe people kind of pay me every once in a while to do a photo shoot, to I'm starting a business. And everything you're saying would feel very overwhelming to me at that point in my business. So how can we kind of simplify that for someone who is maybe like, oh, that sounds really big and broad and scary? Like, how can we kind of make it a little less scary?
Yes, thank you. I don't want this to be scary. So let's break it down. So the very first thing is to remember that the pieces are always the same. You need to remember who you're serving, and you need to know what problems you're solving for that person. And so that never changes. That is the key to succeeding in business and I call this value. You need to understand the value you provide to people. And so as a photographer, if it's brand photography, you're helping them grow their business, you're helping them make money. Like that stuff is very, very solid, concrete, foundational. But where you go next as a business owner, and it doesn't matter what size, is your unique point of view on how to help them make that happen. And so again, like if you're a brand photographer, you have your own opinions, your own beliefs and values about what it means to help a client, be seen through their photography, connect through their photography. There are things that and that matter to you about how you want to make that happen for your clients. That's the stuff that's going to set you apart, to say, like, maybe you believe that I've worked with a photographer, and she had this beautiful statement that nothing is more beautiful than real life. And that stand for that, and letting it kind of actually shine through in how she captures the essence of her clients and also the experience that she, it's like making sure that you know what you stand for and your unique point of view, and then making sure it's showing up in the experience, it's showing up in your messaging, it's showing up in your offerings. And it can be simple. Like there's no business that's too small to really take a stand for how you see things differently and make sure that you're doing things a little bit differently because of it, instead of just following kind of the norm and the way everybody else does it.
So I'm going to play devil's advocate for a second, just to kind of get some people's wheels turning. So the idea of photography, that one I'm a little more versed in. So I'm going to step out of that for a little while. And I'm going to say, let's say someone listening is like, okay, I make custom stationery and I sell it on Etsy. Like, what does it matter what my personal views or values or opinions are if I'm just creating this like stationery and sending it to whoever needs it?
I love that. So stationery could very easily become a commodity. Like, what's the difference between this notebook and this pen or pad of paper or whatever? And so in an instance like that, it's even so much more important that you build more story around your products so that people aren't just seeing a notebook. They're seeing who they want to become in that notebook. So, and the way that you tell that story, like that this notebook is about becoming a certain kind of person, is by taking a stand, by knowing who you're talking to. Like maybe your stationery is specifically for mothers, and you want your stationery to actually feel like a moment of pause and a deep breath for mothers. And you want to believe that, and like your beliefs, you're taking a stand that like everybody deserves a break. Everybody deserves, a beautiful moment just to themselves. Like you can see how some of the kind of ideals and perspectives could come out, and what that might end up looking like. If you've got a physical product, it's beautiful because you can put that into the design. You can put little messages in it. Your marketing, your package, like the packaging that it actually comes in could have little notes like, hey, you're doing amazing. Like, and so it's about knowing what message you really want to give to those people who you've chosen are your people who are going to be receiving your product, using your product, and changing their lives through the use of your product.
So you mentioned kind of knowing who your product is for, and product or service. You don't have to be a product base for this to apply. But I want to kind of stick with the idea of the stationery, just because we started with that. And I say this a lot. I talk about this a lot on the podcast, on social media. It's one of the first things I do with any of my coaching clients is you have to be very, like you said earlier, crystal clear, get clarity around who it is your audience, or who are you trying to attract? Who are you trying to serve? And I know when I started my business, this was a struggle because I was like, well, I take pictures. Like I'll take pictures of anybody, and there was a time in my business where I literally took pictures of people's pet. Like I just didn't have this ideal version of who I was working for or who I wanted to work for. But I think that now, and I have more clarity around this, knowing who your business is designed for is such a key factor because, the stationery idea, if you're making stationery, like you said, for moms who need kind of a break in their day, that want to feel in the chaos of their house, the chaos of the carpool and children's activities and playrooms and toys, they want something that feels clean and simple and organized or whatever. Maybe it's a to-do list notepad, or maybe it's, like you said, an organizer notebook. And if that can bring some calm to their chaos, that's very different branding and messaging than if you are speaking to maybe like a corporate woman who needs it more for her, like correspondences with her clients or, taking notes in meetings. That's two very different people. So how can we really narrow down who our audience is if we're still in that phase of, I don't know who I want to attract. I don't know who my audience is, or the fear zone of, I don't want to eliminate the possibility of a corporate woman coming and buying my stationery when I'm really targeting moms. How can we kind of get clarity around that without feeling that fear?
Yeah. Well, the first thing is you get to choose. A lot of times I think this kind of feels like a journey where you need to get to your one answer, where it's like there's only one option out there that's going to lead to success and that's going to be right for me and my business. But that's not really true. You get to choose. You get to choose the audience that's going to that you're going to want to wake up for each day and make a difference for. And so that's like, it really is a choice. And so what's happening most of the time is we're avoiding the choice and we're telling ourselves it's not hurting us because we're staying, up high and trying to talk to everybody. But like the example you just gave, I like that because it illustrates something. If you try to please them both, you're actually not really serving either of them to the fullest. And so often this talk about finding your target market or your ideal client, it sounds like it's for you. Like, so it's going to help you market to them and that's great, but it's actually for them. Because if you're trying to make your offerings relevant to everybody, then you're going to have an offering that isn't as like transformational or effective or useful to any of the people you're serving. And you don't want that. It's not going to result in, business success because you're not going to be getting the referrals and the raving, customers. But so I really, I love that example. It really illustrates why I do this. And there's a few things that I like to say. The first is who cares about what you care about? And so often, people jump right to demographics, income, things like that. And so, I jump to what do you care about most so that if you want to show up as yourself and talk about things that matter to you, your people are the people who you have built your offerings for and your business for are the same who are going to be resonating with that content, because you might be taking a stand for, women's rights or feminism, but if you've built your business for a completely different audience, that those kinds of like that kind of, value-based messaging is going to turn them off, then you've got a real mismatch. So your values and like what you care about, what you want to talk about and how you want to connect with people, that's always, I think, number one. And that's a psychographic or like a behavioral kind of segmentation versus the demographic. And then
can I pause right there and ask a
absolutely.
question? Because I've had this question brought up a couple of times with coaching clients, or I see it on Facebook a lot where people are like, well, what if, because I always say like, you do have to have a personal connection, in my opinion, to your audience that you're trying to target, because otherwise you're just going to, like you said, you're going to be talking about one thing and they're going to be looking for something different. There's going to be a disconnect. But I hear people all the time say, well, what if I'm not my ideal client? Like, what if I'm not that person? Like, what if we're very different? And my opinion is there has to be something that connects you. And you may have different demographics. So you may live in a different place. You may have a different income level. You might have, like I live in the country on 2 acres, but I have a coaching client who lives in the middle of a city in a downtown apartment. Like that's a demographic that doesn't necessarily have to be the same, but like you said, the psychographics, the behavioral things, like those have to be somewhat connected. Do you agree?
If you want your brand to be authentic.
Yeah.
Yes. And you want your brand to be authentic. So yes. Because, there are brands out there that have built up, a personality, messaging, et cetera, that resonates with a specific kind of client, that possibly, is all fabricated. And these might be large brands with teams that are kind of showing up to create that personality and that kind of character behind the brand. But if it's working, I guarantee you that brand is somehow cultivating those values within the company. Otherwise, it wouldn't be resonating. It wouldn't be connecting, because people only connect when they feel like something's genuine and authentic. And so, yeah, if you are a founder, an entrepreneur, and like, whether or not you're the face of your business, you don't have to be, you're still the best source for those really interesting raw materials that your brand will be made up of. And so, like values. So your values should really determine who you want your clients to be.
Yeah, I completely agree. I always like to hear it, make sure other people, see what other people's opinions are. Cause I'm open to, like, maybe I'm not always on the right track, but I think we both agree that, you have to have something that resonates. Otherwise and I see this a lot too, where people will try to create this persona, like you said, of who they think their audience or who they think their product or service is for. And eventually it fizzles out because they can't keep up this facade of the person they think their audience wants. That's where we got the whole era of Instagram that was so polished and perfected and all the things. And then people were like, no, I want to see like real. I want to see like, you with a messy bun and no makeup on talking to me, not necessarily the mom who's done up every day and her kitchen's perfect and her kids are all matching outfits. Like, that's not real life. And so you have to have, like you said, the values and the connection that go with who it is you're trying to attract.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about how that translates into the messaging. Because I also think there's people who are like, okay, I got it. I know who my audience is. I know, who she is or whatever. I'm clear on that. But how does that translate into what I put out into the world?
Yeah. So I kind of started a little back about talking about how there's value, right? And so I have my model for branding is kind of the 3 different areas that you need to cover with your messaging, with just your existence as a business. And value is right in the center. So some of your messaging is telling people how you can help them. So, here's the problems you're having. Here's the outcomes we can create. Here's some of the benefits of those outcomes or the smaller wins, and making sure that you're actually getting them excited about what will happen if they buy from you. That's just like straight to the point marketing, and that's value. Meaning is the next piece, and that's a lot of what we were just talking about. That's getting deeper, sharing with people what you believe in, sharing with people your vision for the world, and how you like kind of your deeper wish for them and connecting with them in that way. And so that's content and messaging that should be out there, like, hey, this matters because this, and what is that deeper reason why this matters? And then the last piece is originality. And that's when you're getting out there and you're giving them those beliefs and opinions that we talked about that they haven't necessarily heard anywhere else, but that's missing information as to either why they're not getting what they want, or that why they don't understand the value in what you're providing. So for example, for stationery, maybe somebody thinks digital's better. And you really strongly, you've tried both, you have evidence, maybe you're like actually researching or testing, you have information to say, hey guys, women, actually digital is what is causing you to be completely unproductive. Like, that's an example of a piece of your message that would be originality, that would make a case for why your stationery, it's not just your stationery, it's all stationery. All stationery benefits, but because you're the one saying it, people are going to look at your stationery.
Yeah.
And so that's that originality piece, which is really the part that a lot of people ask me about, because there's a lot of great resources out there on how to, to build your brand promise and tell people what you can do and to build your purpose and whatever. But the way that people are told they need to stand out, that's my, that's my piece of the originality puzzle, is like, it's not your personality. It's not, that you need to be the loudest, or it's not your logo or your colors. It's actually your point of view, and start with that and find out what it is you have to say that they haven't heard before about your industry.
So that can be, and this is just coming from like the people pleaser version of me, the one I'm really trying to work through, but it's a little bit scary to want to say like, you should be the one to stand up and speak out about something that you find valuable. Because again, I'll use the stationery example. If all these other people are saying digital is the way to go, and you're going the other direction saying, no, actually, like a pen and paper planner is, or having like a written out to-do list that you put in your purse and take to the grocery store for your grocery list, or whatever that you can physically check things off of for your to-do list. That's the way to go. That can feel a little bit intimidating, because now you are standing up and kind of saying like, no, I think something different. So do you have any like tips or advice for people who are kind of like me, who are like, I don't really want to buck the system, but I do want to have my own thoughts put in there as well?
Yes, absolutely. So the first is to understand that if you're going to be taking that stand, you're doing it from a place of service. And so, you might hear an example and it might sound really controversial and scary, but when you find your message, I call it your revolutionary message. When you find yours, it's not going to feel scary in the same way. It'll still feel scary because putting yourself out there is scary, but it's going to feel like you have no choice, because it is service for you to show up and share this information. And the other thing that I want to say is that's also why it's so important to be clear on who you're serving, because big, broad statements like that often aren't going to be true for everybody. Right. So to say like, that physical notebook is going to win out over digital every time is probably going to mean that you're not right. But, if you know that your audience are moms on the go, and, that pulling up their phone is going to get them distracted, and you've actually like worked with enough, or like experienced enough in your life and in your business that you have some evidence of this that you have seen, then you can say to that specific audience, this is the piece you're missing. Here's why you want to use physical, because you're going to open it and nothing else is going to distract you. Right. Your phone is different. And so you kind of need that bit of a triangle between, who the audience is, what they're trying to accomplish, and then that kind of statement that you're taking for how this audience is best going to accomplish that thing.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. And I'm like, if anybody is starting a planner company, let me know. Cause this is the perfect researcher. We're getting real time, like brain dumps here, because I'm sitting, I literally have my paper planner sitting next to me right now, open with my daily to-do list and then my ongoing like running to-do list. And I know exactly what you said. If I put this in my phone, either A, I would forget about it and not check it. And 2 weeks from now, I'd open up that app and be like, oh yeah, I was supposed to do that one thing 2 weeks ago. Or, which has happened a million times, I open my phone, like fully prepared. I'm going to go to this app and look at my to-do list or my calendar. And the next thing I know, I'm in Instagram for 30 minutes. And I'm like, I close the phone and and I'm like, oh yeah, I was supposed to be doing something else. So yeah, it is very true. And I definitely think this comes back to that idea that you have to know your audience so well, which means you have to have some kind of personal connection to who they are, in order to understand them, or be willing to, I guess, to put in all the research. But I personally think it helps to have that personal connection to who your audience is.
Yeah. Yeah. And to your craft, like, if you've just started a business in a field that you don't really care about, but because you thought you could make money in it, you're not going to be as dedicated to kind of immersing yourself in the whole world of it to kind of see these things that other people aren't seeing. But that's why I like to say it kind of requires a bit of obsession to be like I am obsessed with what makes businesses interesting.
Yeah.
And so I see things because of that obsession. I'm immersed in it. I eat and sleep and breathe it. And so I feel like that's a helpful ingredient. If you want to find your unique point of view, you have to actually really care about what it is you're doing.
Well, I think, on the flip side, like that's how you can maybe tell the other way around that this isn't the best fit for you, because if you aren't, and I'm not saying you have to like think about it all day, every day, but if you're not excited about what you do, if you're not passionate about it, if you don't, stay up till the middle of the night thinking of ideas or whatever, like then this might be a sign that you need to make a pivot of some kind. I know I did a couple of like network marketing programs back in the day when I was teaching and I was trying to figure out like what it is I could do to make some extra money. And one of them was a skincare brand. And I've always loved skincare. I've always been someone who like, I wanted to go into dermatology at one point. I was like, this is perfect. But I got into it and realized really quickly, I was like, I'm not passionate about it. Like I enjoy it myself, but it's not something I'm not passionate about enough that I can convince somebody else or share it with other people in a super exciting way. And so I definitely like that kind of idea that you have to have this passion behind what you do in order for it to be, it comes across in everything that you do. Mm-hmm. So before we kind of get things wrapped up, because I don't want to take up too much of your time here, but we talked about like who you serve, kind of what the problem is that you serve, your unique point of view. You also mentioned like building story around your brand. And I love this idea. I love one of my favorite books of all time that I recommend to everybody is Building a Story Brand with Donald Miller. Love that book. I've read a couple other ones like Stories That Stick and things like that. So I love the idea of storytelling in theory. I'm not so great at putting it into practice. So I would love to know what tips or thoughts or what you have around that idea.
Yeah. Well, one of the tips that I like to share is to think back to kind of moments or periods of high emotion in your own, in your own kind of, I'm trying not to say story, but in your own story. So if you kind of go back and you think, what are the things that really are still sticking with me in terms of I either, was scared or I was heartbroken or I was like so proud of myself. Like the emotions are really good kind of markers in your own life to find things that other people will also find engaging. And then, like you don't have to necessarily tie them right into a beautiful, like a perfect bow around your own brand or the outcome that you provide for people or anything like that, because stories can also just be a great way to either, kind of convey your values and kind of why you care about certain things. They're also great for building that like trust factor. And so I think it's about knowing, which stories are the ones that are the absolute core to the way that you do things in business. So, I have a story that I tell about being a marketing person and having to market businesses that had nothing unique about them. And that is like a core story that I use to kind of share why it's so important to me to create an interesting business so that marketing can just be telling the truth. And so that's like really core to my brand. But then I'll have like other supplementary stories that are really just more about what's made me, about, being let go and needing to kind of take all of these papers off of my desk that the day before I thought were the most important thing in the world. And really learning like nobody gets to waste my time. And that's not really core to the outcome I create for clients or anything like that, but it formed one of my values, which is life well spent and like spending my time with purposeful intention and not sweating all of the small stuff, or allowing other people's false sense of urgency to kind of come into my sense of peace. And so not related to my, core thing, but related to who I am, and still very likely to connect with my ideal clients who value those same things. And so emotions, your core story, and then those things that will kind of signal to people who you are, so that you can use those stories to help the right people feel attracted and the wrong people know that you're not for them.
And so I like how you broke that down, by the way, because I know for me, a lot of times I think of like the big stories and I forget about like kind of the little small pieces of those stories or other stories. Where are we supposed to be sharing these stories, and in what way? Because I know like for a lot of people, our first thought is, well, my kind of go-to is social media. That's where I kind of put myself out there. And with social media changes, everything is about how quickly you can share something. We have stories and reels and TikToks and all these things that are like 60 seconds or less. So how do you share a story type content in a way that grabs attention and that's a shorter format?
It's a good question. The first thing I want to confess is I'm an undersharer. And so I really I have lots of untold stories myself. And I have certainly not cracked the code on the best way to, turn stories into what the social media channels are going to love. But I'm very much about authenticity and truth and what works. And so for me, like the purpose of your stories is to connect and inspire. And so you can tell your story in person with just one person. I'll share my stories in sales calls. I'll share my stories when I'm working with a client and I want to relate to them. And so I just want to say, like, you get to tell your story in any format. And as an undersharer, and a lot of people who kind of end up in my circle in my community are also undersharers. It's just that reminder that, people want genuine and they want to connect with you. And if you share your story in whatever way you can, you get to like, you don't have to hold that back and worry that you're bothering them or taking up their time or boring them. And so for social media, I think just, you got to get over the gimmicky tactics and things like that, and just keep telling your story in whatever format. And I wouldn't think, I think you got to find the format that works for you. For me, live, anytime that I've kind of really gotten into live video or interviews, those are like my two times where stuff will come out naturally. And so I'm much better off spending my time that way than trying to create a bunch of reels personally, because reels are not my thing and they're never going to resonate with my people because I'm not going to be in them fully. Whereas if I show up on a live video and I'm just like telling my story, that's the best way for me to tell my story. And other people might be great at telling their stories through reels. And so it's about finding your natural, I call it your natural currency, like the way that you provide value without even having to try.
Yeah.
And then put your stories in there. Instead of thinking that you need to do it just because this is the hottest thing on Instagram right now. If you have the bandwidth to be playing with that kind of stuff and you enjoy it, awesome. But if that's going to completely take your day away and all you did was one reel, which would be my case, then you're probably better off getting into some coffee dates with humans and actually telling your story that way. So that's my piece on that.
I love that. I was just writing that down, like find your natural currency. I think that's so key. And I kind of talk about this when it comes to like, what's your core content? Like, where do you kind of gravitate towards? And I think, for me, like podcasting has always been sort of my like currency, because I can just talk to people all day long. It gives me energy. It fills me up. I leave every conversation feeling like I learned something. I met somebody, I had a great time, and I can go about my day. And, honestly, like surprisingly, like Instagram Reels have kind of become a little bit of my natural currency. Like I enjoy it more than I ever would have thought that I would. But I love that idea of just like, it has to come naturally to some degree. I mean, there's a learning curve for everything, but yeah, I mean, everybody gravitates towards different things that they're good at. And if you're not good at real-time conversations, then doing live things may not be best for you. If you're an amazing writer, which I envy people who have these incredible copywriting skills, then maybe it's blogging, maybe it's creating carousel posts, maybe it's writing, all the Facebook content, whatever it is. But yeah, find your natural currency. I think that's so key. So thank you for that little gem of information there. Well, Lisa, this has been fascinating. I could talk branding and marketing and business with you all day long. Like you were saying about how like you eat, sleep, and breathe this. Like that's how I feel too. So this is fascinating to me and I love it. But thank you so much for your time today. Thank you so much for sharing with us. Please tell everybody how they can find you, how they can get in touch with you if they have questions or want to reach out to you.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me, Kendra. And yes, I would love if anybody is, looking for like clarity, messaging, positioning, up-leveling their business through their brand, they can find me at realizeyourbrand.com or on social media at realizeyourbrand. And you can book a consult with me. Just we can connect and have a conversation. And so I look forward to connecting.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did. And as always, you can find any links or resources mentioned in today's show down in the show notes. And if we're not friends outside the podcast yet, then what are you waiting for? Come find me on Instagram at Girl Means Business and send me a DM letting me know what you thought of today's episode or any of the past episodes you've listened to. You can also take a screenshot of today's episode and post it to your stories, tagging at Girl Means Business, and I'll give you a shout out on my page. I love connecting with you and hearing all about your business and can't wait to get to know you more. I hope you have a wonderful week and I will meet you back here next week, same time, same place.